Hey, what's up, everybody? So I want to put out a video to sort of give a formal testimonial and sort of how-to on my experience with becoming a prisoner pen pal. So I use writeaprisoner.com to make my pen pals. It's a really easy to use, simple interface. There are, drop-down menus to select where your pen pal lives, their sex, their race, their religion, if you're interested in writing to people of certain, affinity groups. I chose to write to people in Texas because they have a particularly punitive criminal legal system. And, I'm a practicing public defender and wanted to avoid ever generating any sort of conflict of interest. One of the questions I've received is about making pen pals with, gay identifying, trans identifying, queer identifying, incarcerated people. There isn't a filter for that on writeaprisoner.com, but I'm sure if you were to reach out to an advocacy group like Black and Pink here in Massachusetts, they would be able to put you in touch with the right kind of people. Or the other sort of topic that I see myself advising a lot of people on is the fact that a lot of people use this website for dating purposes. And if that's not what you're interested in, there are filters that you can select to only see incarcerated people who are seeking, platonic pen pals. That's what I use. I still think it's advisable that in your introductory letter, you make it clear what your intentions and interests are to whoever you're writing to. I did that, and the people were not disappointed by the fact that I was another man who was not interested in dating incarcerated men. Another sort of area that I've gotten a lot of questions on is like, do you know in advance what they're serving for, what crime they've been convicted of? I did not seek that out before deciding who I wanted to write to. I based my choice of potential pen pal based on, the interests that they expressed in their profiles, things like that. I might be a little unique in that fact because I am a public defender. I don't care if somebody's been convicted of murder, of a sex offense, of a drug offense. I still think they're all people with human dignity who deserve compassion. But I certainly understand if you don't have that mentality. The website doesn't show what they've been convicted of, but if you Google search their name plus the state where they've been convicted, you're likely to find that information. If there are certain convictions that make you uncomfortable or evoke a certain, traumatic response in you, you need to follow your own boundaries in selecting who you're going to write to. One thing I would say is that the people I've corresponded with have been very upfront with talking to me about the circumstances of their conviction. But I wouldn't advise asking them directly about it until you form a certain bond, or even ever, because your correspondences are not going to be protected by any sort of privilege. The things they write about in those letters could be used against them in a parole hearing or a disciplinary hearing. The last little area of sensitivity that I've spoken to some people about has to do with sharing your mailing address with your pen pal. I've always just, physically handwritten letters to my pen pals with my return address. Like I said, I work with an incarcerated population. But if you're not comfortable with that, if you have specific vulnerabilities, or if you just want to erect a more significant barrier of privacy, there are workarounds. The only one I really have experienced is with people who are incarcerated in Massachusetts. You can use a website called corelinks.com. It's actually a fairly simple interface. It does cost money, but it costs about as much as a stamp. All you need really to send out an email is the person's prisoner ID number, which is usually on the profile for people who are incarcerated in Massachusetts. It starts with a W followed by like 6 or 7 numbers. You can add them to your contact list and then send them an email. The main drawback of that system is that not every incarcerated person has access to CoreLinks. They might not have set up an account because they're not anticipating anybody contacting them. They might not have certain privileges. They might be at a security classification that doesn't allow them access to the computer. Or it might just be the whims of whoever's in charge of them that day. It is slightly less likely that your email will reach them rather than snail mail. But if privacy is your concern, that's a really great workaround. So the final thing I want to talk about is what should you include in your first letter to your new pen pal? I think you'd be surprised by how interesting the basic, mundane details of your life can be to somebody who's locked in a cage for 23 hours a day. So in my first letter, I gave a little biographical information, I talked about being a public defender, how I'm interested in prison abolition, how I like lifting weights, how I play video games, how the books I like to read, all the nerdy stuff that I'm into. Just don't doubt yourself. You say whatever comes to you. In my experience, the people I've run into are very lonely. They don't have a lot of support on the outside or the inside. And they're just going to be elated to receive anything and to forge a friendship with you. So finally, if you have any other questions, feel free to comment. Feel free to DM me. I'm far from the expert on this, but I've had a really positive experience, and I think, my experience doing this combined with my work, I might have some helpful insights to offer you. So thanks.